Hi, welcome back to the Travi Wavi. I am your affable host, Travis Eason, your local Renaissance man, podcaster, artist, and this is your weekly local community interests and community conversation station. And we're really excited to be back here again. We come to you live on Thursday mornings downtown at the Neon Parrot Live Studios. You're always welcome to come down and watch. There's wonderful coffee next door at Majestic Coffee Shop, serving Onyx coffee, my personal favorite. And we love doing this show every week. We're coming to you live from the storybook capital of America, and we're always bringing you wonderful guests, people in the community that are making things happen and doing interesting things. We got a wonderful guest on today, Jeff Salmon. Thanks, Jeff, for being here.
Yeah.
A couple more quick community things I just want to bring up. In Abilene, we have a wonderful, wonderful hospice community that's connected and organized with the Hendrick Health Club or Hendrick Medical System. And I've got a couple things here that have been brought to my attention that I want to bring up in case that you are dealing with some grief. We've got Club Courage coming up. You can register now. It meets every Tuesday, October 14th through November 18th. You can get some more information about that at hendrickhospice.org/clubcourage. And then one more quick thing on this is the Wave of Light. It's a light a candle in memoriam of all babies gone too soon. It's a tough subject, but we need to bring it up, and we just have wonderful resources here in Abilene for all hospice and grieving things. And again, just get in contact with Hendrick Hospice, and we will connect you with the right resources. Okay, thanks for all that. Jeff, welcome.
Hey.
Thanks for being here.
This is fun.
So Jeff Salmon is the executive director of Frontier Texas.
That is me.
And you and your wife started Providence Classical Academy?
We did that for a while when our kids were young.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that,
Right,
and then we went back to homeschooling and online schooling things and let that go by the side. But there is another classical Christian school here now called Abilene Classical Academy.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's talk about Frontier Texas because that's kind of the highlight of today. And before we get into that, tell me, do you have any siblings?
You know, that's a fun one for me because I am the youngest of 6 kids.
That's great.
And so I have got 4 brothers and a sister that's right in the middle of all of us guys, and they're a great group. We are very spread out nowadays, but we still connect.
Good.
And so I've got brothers. Let's see, my oldest brother lives in Oslo, Norway.
Wow.
The next brother down is in Milwaukee. The next brother's close by out in Weatherford, a sister in Waco, and then a brother that's closest to me in London, England.
Wow.
So it's fun because if you get to go visit siblings, it's fun places.
Yeah, you get to travel the world a little bit.
It was funny. I was talking about it the other day to somebody. They were like, oh, my goodness, your family, your siblings, you know, someone who knew us here growing up, through Abilene High. And said, boy, your siblings went so many different places. And I said, Mom was always telling us kids, like, study hard so you can go far in life. I think we took that kind of as a literal challenge that you're supposed to physically go far away.
That's great.
So all of us did go far away. Even I did. I had gone away for a while before coming back.
That's good.
So it's fun.
So you grew up in Abilene?
Yeah, I did. I grew up here on the north side, went to Taylor Elementary, Franklin Junior High. I went to Abilene Christian Schools for a couple of years, and then I was at Abilene High.
That's great.
All through that. And
That's great.
And then I was at ACU for long enough for most people to get a degree, maybe even a master's, but I got most of a degree and then transferred to North Texas and finished up there.
Cool. And then how did you get involved with Frontier Texas? Tell me some of that backstory.
Yeah, so my wife, Deirdre, and I, when we got married, we were living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I worked for a nonprofit, Easter Seals, doing planning medical seminars for them, and that got me kind of tied into the tourism industry because the convention and visitors bureaus around the DFW area really wanted my medical seminar business because it was weekend business where we would book a few hundred hotel rooms. And so I started learning about those people, and I thought it was fascinating that they were promoting their town. And I thought, that's very odd. I hadn't really thought about that at all. And then I asked somebody one day, how do I get one of those jobs? And they said, well, there's a lot of convention and visitors bureaus around. And I ended up getting a job with the city of Plano as their tourism manager, working on bringing in tourism and sporting events and things, and did well in that. Then the next step I took from there, I did go work for a museum in Addison in North Dallas. It was an aviation museum, and that was a great experience that I got to be around a lot of amazing veterans who had served in World War II and Korea, Vietnam eras, and that was fascinating. But I was mainly there because I was a promoter and a tourism-minded person. And I did that for a couple of years, then went to the city of Fort Worth and became the tourism director for the city of Fort Worth. And so it was a great experience. It was a wonderful time in Fort Worth with new things, big things. While I was there, we had just opened up Texas Motor Speedway. We had the new Bass Hall Performing Arts Center, lots of expansions downtown, and the stockyards. We started a cattle drive every day. So it was a wonderful time. I was part of an amazing team in Fort Worth. And I was working there, and one of my, two of my coworkers were guys who had been at ACU.
Okay.
Greg Staley was there. He was communications director, and Troy Myatt was the creative director in the Fort Worth CVB. And so we had this little Abilene club there in Fort Worth. And one day, an Abilenian, someone who both of them had worked with here in Abilene, Bob Nutt from Zachary Associates.
Bob.
He was working with his boss, HC, on this new project, Frontier, Texas.
Okay.
And he was doing business in DFW and stopped by to see us and told us about it and said, hey, any of you guys want to come work with us out there, or do you know anybody? I didn't even think for a second about me doing that. I just remember thinking, oh, man, that's going to be a great job for somebody. At that point, we had 4 kids, ages like, about 2, 4, 6, and 8 years old, and, enjoying life in the Metroplex. And so I spent time trying to help HC and the board chair, Billy Proctor Shaw, find somebody. And I sent them a couple of candidates who didn't want, in the end, weren't impressed enough with Abilene, or the job didn't pay enough or something. And so over time, HC and Billy Proctor Shaw convinced me, you really should come do this. And so I came out and just to help talk them through that. And it was actually one of our assistant city managers, Kathy Merrill, that really convinced me to take the job, because she said, Jeff, you're doing really well. You've put together a skill set, and you're contributing a lot to these other cities you've worked for. I can see it. You have a good track record. Wouldn't you rather do that for something that is called your home, your hometown? And
it's a little bit of guilt on
yeah,
that.
she did. She was amazing at that. And so my mom was here, and my mom was getting elderly, and I didn't know that I didn't have much time left with her, but that was a motivating factor. And so the hard thing was convincing my wife, she had come out here. We had met at ACU.
Okay.
My wife, Deirdre, had come out here, but I think she felt like Abilene was a wonderful place to come visit bring the kids to Grandma's house.
We don't want to move there.
Maybe not live here at first. And then my board got in and convinced her, maybe I'll give this a try. And she said, okay, let's give it a try. We'll give you 3 years. And then at the end of 3 years, she was like all in. This is where we want to be and where we want to raise kids. We could go lots of places, but this is where we want to be.
Good.
So,
and that was 20-some years ago.
Yeah, that was actually, I started September 1st, 2003.
Wow.
I was 36. I am 58.
Wow.
So a big chunk of my life as the executive director of Frontier, Texas, and it's been really such an honor and a great, wonderful place to be.
Well, I got to meet you back in, I want to say 2017, maybe?
Somewhere, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Let me think. Maybe right around there. Yeah, we were... in 2013, we renovated all of our exhibits and added new content, and we were adding some more hologram characters in Frontier, Texas. And we needed a new military figure. And there was we were trying to really contrast the earlier characters and add someone who was a contrasting point of view to them. And so the original military character hologram, who is still there, we didn't displace them, but we added another one, was kind of a more of a statesman type military guy, Colonel Marcy. And so he kind of talked about appeasement and trying to map things out. And his story was a little bit kind of soft around the edges. And we thought, that's not the full story. There was this really harsh, hard narrative about the U.S. Army coming into Texas to fight and continue to keep Mexico at bay and to subjugate and take land from our Indian tribal people. And so after the Civil War, they needed a real war fighter to solve that problem. And they brought you in. They brought in Ranald McKenzie, who had been a very young officer during the Civil War and proved himself well. And then they sent him out here to solve the problem. And the thing about McKenzie that you might recall from the script is that he didn't have a problem with just bringing total war,
total chaos
to people. So he would, and he was comfortable with, here's what the written rules of engagement are, but here's what the president and the Congress wanted of him and the Texans, which was to really repel the tribal people, push any of the groups that were along the border back into Mexico, and then to get all of the other tribal people onto reservations. And he brought just a very harsh type of warfare. So we got you to, remember, we
shaved
got you
up a little bit,
shaved, live with a big mustache like McKenzie had.
Yep.
That we didn't have to take the hair out.
Didn't have to
we
cut my hair,
back.
pulled it back tight.
We made it look like it was a nice trim cut.
Yep.
We put you in uniform, and you have been a hologram now for all of those years, and like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have seen you doing that. So it's kind of fun.
It's crazy. And I usually don't out myself that I'm in the museum, but I thought this is a good one to do it today. That was a really fun project, and I remember we shot a lot of that at a studio in town, at Pink Goose maybe.
Pink Goose was the one where we used
and then we went on site, and we did some filming on site at...
we went to Fort McCavitt.
That's right, Fort McCavitt.
Where Mackenzie had been, which is down near the town of Menard, about 2 hours from here south.
And that was pretty neat. So just to kind of tie this back into Frontier, Texas. So Frontier, Texas is a museum that has been in Abilene. It's just right behind me, a couple blocks. And it's open during the week.
That's right, every day.
Every day. And you can go there, and it's a really neat museum. If you've never been, it's really well done. You guys just updated and added a whole new exhibit, which we can talk about in a second. But just to kind of give our viewership more information about Frontier, Texas, it's on the Texas Forts Trail.
Right.
And there's just a lot of history, both about the native people that were here before, the exploitation of the bison, the different military aspects. You've got holograms of Native Americans that are talking from like inside a teepee. Right. There's just really cool things. What else do you want to highlight for us? Yeah,
so the thing that I've enjoyed, like when your job is to sell a product, you sell the product you have, and sometimes that's hard. I mean, I work with people in tourism that represent towns, and you would go like, you have to get tourists to come to that, and that's But this product, H.C. Zachary had this amazing vision for telling the most compelling true stories in the most compelling way we could. And so he had the idea that instead of competing with other museums, just throw that aside. We're competing against Hollywood movies. We're competing against everything that is coming out on the internet, all content. And so he came up with this idea of these holograms where a life-size person just appears, looks you straight in the eye. No matter where you're standing, they look you in the eye, and they tell you their story. And instead of talking about history, they just talk about themselves. So it's a very human experience. And H.C. said, instead of going by what's important to textbooks, because kids need to learn certain factual things, he said, what are the most compelling stories, and can we represent everyone? And so it turned out originally there was just these like 9 characters that kind of represented not just kind of like demographic representation,
Right.
but kind of thematic representation. And so it ended up being this fascinating group of real people that we got actors to portray. And so that's what's been the secret to the success over these 22 years is that people connect emotionally with these stories. It's like, because like you and I are having an actual real world conversation right now. Other people are watching in on that.
Yeah.
But, and we are sort of talking to this audience. But you and I are talking to each other. The neat thing about what HC did was he created this environment where those people are just telling a heartfelt part of their life.
Yeah.
And so that just worked really well for us. And like you said, the themes are, there's just natural themes. Abilene is situated now where the crossroads of all of these different kind of migratory, like massive world events. And so it was easy to pick the true stories that lots of people were fascinated with. And so the interesting thing is that when we opened, word started getting around that we had done something very different. That in the museum industry, we had taken some things that Smithsonian had done, and a couple of museums had kind of this first-person narrative thing, but we had taken it to a new level with the technology. And it was fun to see. I would get phone calls and say, "Hi, I'm with a group from the Alamo. We're trying to figure out what to do down here. Can we come talk to you?" And they would bring a group of people up. One of my favorites was like 4 guys one summer afternoon asked if they could meet with me. They said, "Oh, we work for a little tech company, and we're trying to figure out. We've heard that your holograms are really well done." And I said, "Yeah, let me tell you all about it. You know, we have no secrets. It's not proprietary, but we did create this particular way of showing it. It came out of HC's head." And then they said, "Well, we probably should disclose that, yes, we do work for this little company, but we are actually Disney." And it was people from Disney World, exhibit developers that came to look, because they were, the word got out that it was just
It's well done.
different. It was
It's really
different.
well done.
So it works well. It helps us tell the story. So it serves primarily one of the things that was very important to the people who funded it, privately funded, partnered with the city, was able to get one big federal grant from the transportation funds, but it was mainly just a privately funded thing. And one of the big goals was economic development. We wanted to make sure that we were helping to improve our possibilities for tourism. And the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, and the city had studied and figured out we need a museum that is narrative focused on that Old West. And so that's where it came from. And so most days or most years, about anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 of our visitors, they're from out of town every day.
Great.
So people are shocked about that.
Yeah.
Like I was at the museum this morning, and first thing this morning, there was an out-of-state couple. I didn't get a chance to talk to them, but I heard them say, "Oh, well," one of my people say, "Well, welcome to Texas," to them.
Yeah.
People don't know that that's true, but I-20 has so much east-west traffic, and then there's people traveling north-south coming from, anywhere from Canada, whatever, going down, traveling Texas, those directions. So we're still a crossroads. Lots of people stop by, and we've done a good job of marketing ourselves. But then secondarily, we needed to fill a role in education. We needed to make sure we were inspiring our kids as they were growing up, that they are part of an amazing story. That's the thing I love the most, is that people, all kinds of people, not just kids, hear those stories being told and see themselves in those people. Because if you really look at the characters that we talk about, almost all of them to some degree were kind of almost a refugee of a type that were kind of ended up here due to forces outside of their control.
Yeah.
They ended up here because they were kind of often desperate for a place to try to live and thrive. And I love it when people connect to that. And I like to tell people, if you're inspired by these stories, this is your story. And so, well, I'm from South Dakota. And I said, no. If you are here, if you've come to Texas and you actually, get mail here, whatever, claim it. You can be a Texan right now.
Yeah.
You're part of this story. And whether you can have other identities too, but you're part of it. And it's a long ongoing series of people just struggling to make the world better and to fulfill their dreams and their purpose, whatever their purpose is.
Yeah.
And so I love seeing people get inspired by that. And it happens all the time.
Well, I think it's, that's interesting that you bring that up, and just, it's been a minute since I've been through the museum, but I'm just thinking about some of the other hologram characters, the spirit guides. You've got like cattle trail people moving cattle, and people moving mail and supplies, and I think there was a pioneer woman that's just trying to make her spot.
Fascinating story, right?
And knowing that we talk about Abilene being the storybook capital of America, but it was started by the railroad coming through. So like our history isn't that old still, just to cut,
really
just a little over 100 years old, and that just impacts everything that's happened here, and still to this day, like you said, being a crossroads, being a place that's kind of off I-20, and we're a bit of a melting pot that's kind of stuck out here in the West Texas plateau. We're not surrounded by very much. We're kind of isolated in that way geographically.
Yeah.
So, and even looking back, like with the museum, going back in time and seeing that we can relate today to a lot of the same, maybe like you said, migratory issues or finding a place as the characters did in the past.
I think so. I think it's very relatable if you are open to that idea. We worked with the refugee program here in town and brought new refugees multiple times as groups to come through. And we talked about that these characters, they might seem very different from you, but think about it, that they were uprooted from somewhere else. All those characters, none of the characters that we represent as holograms were born and raised here. None of them. So they were all people who were uprooted from somewhere and came. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. But it also helps. One of the things that's really nice about us is just kind of a nice, well done tourist attraction kind of thing, is that very often when people are relocating, they end up there. It's particular. So like if ACU or Hendrick Hospital is recruiting a new employee, trying to get them to come and say, would you consider moving out here, leaving someplace else that might feel more civilized or something to them? Definitely easy for them to be moving somewhere that is more naturally beautiful landscape and topography and stuff. And so oftentimes those groups bring them to Frontier, Texas as just a starting point, because they do have the question. They get here and they look around, and especially people coming from the east, the landscape starts changing.
Absolutely.
Here. And we all know, because it's September. It's typical this time of year for kind of everything to feel kind of dead and crunchy, We've been real fortunate this year. It's been a little bit better. It's been better. But people come here and they do have this sense that you're implying, like, why did people stop here? Why is the city needed here? What are these people doing? And there's a technical reason. The railroad needed water. They needed to stop for water for their steam engines. And there was just enough water, which is basically the creek that Lytle Lake was just enough water for them. But in the end, the story of Abilene and the towns around us are just, people came here and said, you know what, this is good enough. And this is something that I can contribute here.
Yeah.
And I like the scale of Abilene for most people. I think one of your other guests mentioned that he moved from far west Texas, Darren.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, coming to Abilene was moving up to a big town and moving east.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was like talking about people moving from Dallas think they're moving out to the Wild West out here. So I like that we get these different worlds that mix right here in Abilene. I enjoy that. It was a great place for me to raise my kids because it was easily connected to both worlds. They could see rural lifestyles and they could be connected to that, but they could also be connected to the rest of the world easily with our universities and all of that. So,
well, I think it's great that Frontier, Texas is a feather in the cap of Abilene, and it's got to make you feel good that that's something that when we're recruiting to bring
Right.
people there and show them what what's capable.
Oh yeah, it's so rewarding for those of us who get to work there and the people who come and serve on our board. Yeah, it's really neat to watch and to get to be close to.
And so after 20 years, you guys recently, or the Frontier Texas recently expanded.
That's right. One of the challenging things for us as a community museum was that HC's vision was primarily tourist oriented first and foremost. So we used kind of a Smithsonian model for exhibitry where you put a lot into them and you expect them to be curated in a way that should be useful for an entire generation, is what it's called, generational exhibit development. And that's turned out to be true, that the core of what HC developed 20 plus years ago still works, the core of it. But the one thing we didn't have as a community museum was a lecture hall, classroom type space for activities, and a temporary exhibit hall where we could bring in new exhibits on a regular basis. And so we started in 2016 planning for that and put together a strategic plan to get us from 2016 to 2024, where a number of things had to fall in place. Donors, renewing a hotel tax that is designated for us and the Expo Center, which we had to put in front of the voters, and that happened. And then we raised what ended up being $4.5 million to expand. And so we now have a gallery. It's called the Jim and Jerry Alexander Gallery, named after two of our, a family that was very active in historic preservation. They are the ones who preserved Fort Phantom Hill. And in fact, Jim, for many years, officed right next door on the other side of this wall for decades. But his family wanted to honor him, and so we took on his collection. So we have things in a archive now. We have things, and we're starting to even collect a little bit more. So we went from being just a tourist attraction, really, that was very static in a way, to now we're kind of, I feel like, growing up. I feel like I'm a big kid now. We're a real museum. We've got archives, and we have to, which I can't say I put on white gloves, actually, but Shelley, our collections director, she's actually put on white gloves.
Nice.
We have archival stuff.
I love it.
And then we have the space. And so when we opened on March 2nd last spring, the first exhibit was on ranching heritage. And that was kind of in honor of the Alexander family and artifacts they had, but also a whole bunch of other families around here who came and settled and figured out farming is, one thing, but this land is a little bit more designed for ranching, and we just kind of told that story. So we took that down a few weeks ago, and we are just in the process. In fact, as soon as I get up from here, I'm going back to finish up installing a new exhibit, which will open in 2 weeks in fact, 2 weeks from today. It is about the military coming to Texas when we became a state. And so that exhibit will be up from October through February. And so that's exciting. And then we've also been using we have a lecture hall, classroom space that's also being rented by people for their own events. A lot of nonprofits are already starting to use it for meetings, and people are renting it. I think we've already had a wedding at our facility since it's been renovated and has new space. We have a lot of other things that we're using in these new spaces. And so the new spaces are beautifully done. We worked with Rick Weatherall, Weatherall Architects. They designed this new space. So sometimes you can drive by and glance over and think, has it always been like that? Because they did such a good job of incorporating this whole new section of the museum that just fits right into the architecture, the flow of it. They came up with some great ideas on the flow of these spaces. And so it's just a wonderfully adapted space. And so we're very excited about that.
That's great. And then the new exhibit that is opening next week is called Guardians of the Frontier.
That's right. It's called Guardians of the Frontier, subtitle, The U.S. Army in Texas from 1845 to 95. And so Texas became a state in 45, really the beginning of 46. The main reason that was important to the rest of the Union was that we needed to push back Mexico. We had been a republic for 10 years at that point, but Mexico was still not happy with that and threatening to come take back Texas, and had been, so the Republic of Texas needed more support. The U.S. needed land here, but also they figured out that the secret to gaining all of the West, so to gaining Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, California, all of that, was getting Texas to become a state and then bringing the U.S. military in to go push back Mexico. So it's an interesting thing I learned while curating this military history exhibit. Right before we even became a state, knowing that we were headed that direction, they moved about a third of the U.S. military to Texas, to Galveston, Corpus Christi, down on the border. And then as soon as we were a state, they moved and pushed all the way back down to Brownsville, where South Padre is now, pushed all the way back there. And then eventually the Mexican-American War went all the way into Monterrey and took over the northern part, and then went straight in all the way to Mexico City. So before the warring, before the U.S. was going to go to war with them for this situation, they had offered to buy all of these Western territories for $30 million. And the Mexican government said, oh, no, that's not enough, and it's not for sale. So the U.S. military goes in and very handily takes over Mexico, goes all the way into Mexico City, just basically takes over Mexico and forces a treaty, and then says, now we're willing to pay you $15 million. And Mexico said, we'll take it.
Yeah.
So tough history. War's always tough. Very complicated history.
Well, when we think about just even like today and what's going on in the world today with all the various different things.
Yeah, a lot of conflict.
But that it wasn't that long ago that we had American troops on American soil pushing to try to, defend and aggressively take land from our neighbors. So, I mean, it's kind of just part of our history in a way. I'm not trying to make, it's just interesting.
Well, and the things we talk about at Frontier Texas, there's so many complicated stories. Before the Europeans were coming in battling, the tribes, the tribal people of the plains, some of those groups were very imperialistic. There's a great book called Empire of the Summer Moon by S.C. Gwynn, which did a beautiful job of analyzing the Comanche as an imperialistic nation, and how they were fighting with each other to gain territory and to subjugate each other, and that they were the dominant force. That was the second part of the story of the military in Texas, was coming in and trying to push the Comanche back out, where they had come in to Texas probably about 100 years before, more or less. And complicated stories there of conflict, and who's going to get to be in charge of lands, and whose values get to be the dominant values. It is kind of surprising to someone like me, who's a student of politics and history, to look at where we are today, and there's still these big conflicts happening. Yeah,
and there's
today.
Yeah, interestingly, like some similarities too, even though it doesn't seem like that. There's still just this idea of like, my ideology is better than yours, and I'm going to conquer that in some form.
Right.
It's
fashion. That's seems to be something that is, somebody has to have a prevailing ideology. Every group that has any kind of cohesive self-identity, collective identity, there has to be some kind of ideology behind that of some type. So somebody's worldview is going to be dominant.
Yeah.
And if you look at the history of the world, unfortunately, surprisingly, because of our nature as humans, by force, more often than not.
So I'm going to try to make this segue, see if it'll work. Speaking of this, so we have this new data center in Abilene, the Stargate project, and I think just as like yesterday even, CNN was here, CBS was here, Sam Altman, our mayor, Wendell Hurt, Ted Cruz and some other people did a sort of like a
Yeah,
press
right.
release thing, and they got some footage of the facilities, and it got me thinking about the fact that artificial intelligence only exists in hardware. We have to have the hardware for that
Oh,
software to
right.
run, and we are building the house for AI in our backyard with
Yeah.
Stargate, the biggest project in the country.
Yeah.
And and we don't really have a choice about that as citizens and as just people that live here. It's happening. It's happening in our backyard, and maybe this isn't the best comparison, but it kind of feels like the cavalry's arrived in a way, and that there's a
Yeah.
new ideology that's pushing itself
Yeah.
upon us and telling us that no, this is oh, you're not using ChatGPT? Well, you probably should, because you're going to get left behind
Yeah.
if you don't. So I want to pick your brain about that, but I also want to get a sense from you. We talked earlier that you and your wife have some Airbnbs and how that's kind of impacted our community from your standpoint. So anyway, any thoughts
Well,
about
the
that?
interesting thing is I analyzed and saw why are they coming here, and started listening to people, listening to what they were saying, listening to our economic development people. It's the same story as this crossroads of the Old West where we had cattle drives, we had these railroad coming through. It's this intersection of cultures, and we're just conveniently geographically in the center of the country.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons they like this location, is that it's just a geographic spot. And then it goes back to all of these things about resources. Like the railroad stopped here because there was a creek over here that had more consistent water, and so, okay, town. Then later, as the oil boom that didn't take place right on top of us, but the very first rounds of oil booms, East Texas, got all the way right up near us, up to about Cisco, and then it kind of falters, and then a little line up towards about where Albany is. And so we were just this little no man's land where we didn't quite get it here at first, and then it kind of jumped over us, and the oil boom out west, Midland, Odessa. And so we were this little pocket right in the middle of all of that energy. And if you don't know, the data center, one of the big strategic reasons that we made sense was because of I believe, don't get me talking technicalities here, but there's the natural gas that's in our area because of that industry surrounding us, that they're going to be harnessing some of that for the energy for this center. That's a big part of it. But then also, we just happen to have this other natural resource that I think most of us who live here, we get annoyed with it more than anything else at times, but we just happen to have the purest wind.
You've got
and
good
so
wind.
over the past 20 years, we've watched the wind energy develop around us. And so we have that very large infrastructure development. And even though lots of people have lots of opinions about wind energy and its sustainability, it's there right now. And so that helps this section of the grid. And then we just otherwise politically, we're the kind of communities that are not fighting probably not fighting successfully against other types of traditional energy development. And so we're kind of an electricity-rich community. The big concern that I heard about too was water, because the traditional data centers had to be next to really abundant water, but this new model seems to be their closed system solves that problem. Because to be honest, that's from the very beginning of the frontier, the reason we didn't develop more, the biggest reason was a limitation of water. Because the amount of amount of rainfall that we get compared to like Dallas Fort Worth it's dramatically different. My mother-in-law spent 20-something years living in the Fort Worth area, and then when she moved out here moved next door to us, which is awesome. She, starting to do gardening and taking care of her lawn, she was just surprised how different it was. Even though she had grown up in further West Texas, she'd forgotten how arid it is here. So those natural resources are interesting. But then just to the idea about what a data center and artificial intelligence, that is a fascinating discussion, because that whole idea of the development of information as a resource for industry and helping people do things better. We've already been in that business for a long time, by having universities here. The fact that we developed a good, strong universities around us that are very, have done well.
Yep. We value education.
And for education, that was important to the Air Force coming here. They wanted to be close to some higher education. And so all of these things combined, it's our stories has some commonalities with almost every community, every region of the world. There's natural resources and human resources coming together to make civilization. And it's an interesting time, but there's so many parallels back to the first people who showed up here. I think there's a lot of parallels.
That's interesting. So being a character in the storybook capital of America and, running this amazing museum that brings in a lot of tourist activity and people from all over the world. I'm sure you've got people from all over the world that have come. Yeah. And you've just done some expansion. You're curating some new exhibits. What are some other, do you have some more long-term plans for the museum or some other ways that you feel like the museum, Frontier Texas, can help impact the community further?
Yeah.
Any dreams?
Well, first, let's get to something that's coming up really soon.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, I'm going to start with a step back before I tell you what's coming up on October 18th. A number of years ago, our board had looked at, we have this acreage because we have a big courtyard that's fenced and gated, and it's beautiful, and it's got good lighting for night, so we can have events. And we were trying to find ways to just utilize that better for the community. And we were starting to come up with some things. But another nonprofit, New Horizons, had come to us and said they were looking at doing a fundraiser around craft beers, and so they were looking for a place to host the Abilene Beer Summit. And we said, hey, this is great. What our board and I was excited about it was something that wasn't that was not happening in Abilene. There was little bits and pieces of craft beer going on, but it wasn't being widely celebrated. And so that event brought what I call a quality of life enhancement to our community. And the venue played a big role in that because it was just a very well-suited venue for that event. Now, eventually they kind of outgrew us, and I believe New Horizons is hosting that at the 201 Mesquite Event Center. They did last year. I think they're doing that again, possibly this year. But then we saw that was successful, and we had talked about possibly doing something similar, a quality of life event. It's okay, it's a fundraiser for us, but it's also just something that brings something really well done for our people to enjoy. And so we have the West Texas Wine Festival.
Very fun.
And that's going to be on Saturday, September 18th.
Very fun.
And so this is our third year.
Okay.
And what we did was we invited the best Texas wineries, and we invited them to come. And so it's been, at first we were thinking about bringing some wineries from other places and having wines of the world and things like that. But in the end, we realized what our locals thought was fun and interesting was for us to bring in the best Texas wines. And so far, these past 3 years, it has been exclusively Texas wineries that come. And so it's just a fun afternoon where for our VIPs, they can have lunch at noon to 1, and then after that, it opens up to everybody from 1 until 6, and you get an armband, and you get to go do little tastings, and we have food, and we put out a tent so that it's if the weather's a little bit, it's typically shading us from heat, but it's kind of, if there was a little rain, it would be fine. But it's just a fun day where we celebrate one of Texas's biggest agricultural products. It's surprising to people how big grape growing is in Texas. Some people know that there's some couple of big wineries up towards the Panhandle between here and Lubbock, but there's many wineries in Texas. And something that other people don't know, if you talk about history, Texas wines are Texas grapes are the core of almost every French wine. There's this bizarre story, too long to tell today, but there was a time when French wine grapes were failing because of a blight. Okay. And they ended up getting Texas grapes that were resistant to that. So they brought imported Texas vines to France. And so the world owes Texas a huge debt of gratitude.
French wine.
French wine would not exist today if it weren't for Texas.
That's
it.
so great. I love
so
that.
true. So anyway, we love celebrating it. It's a fun day. It's also a fundraiser for the museum. We're a nonprofit, but it's great. So that'll be a great event. You can find more information about the West Texas Wine Festival on our website, frontiertexas.com/wine, I think. But so that'll be a fun day.
That'll be good.
And so that's kind of in the future. But also, too, we're just looking to the future of just finding better ways to continue serving our community. We love working with school teachers who are trying to help their students understand their place in the world. And those are the humanities teachers. The history teachers, the language arts teachers have this, this really complicated job of nurturing their students to have a sense of who they are in relationship to the world. And I'm a little bit biased because I'm a history museum. You don't tend to get that from STEM, from science, technology, engineering, math. Somebody could integrate those two, but it doesn't tend to happen. And so our teachers here who bring the kids, so we get almost every single school kid in the region within an hour and a half comes to us at some time in their school career. So we've always been very, very popular with schools in this region. And so that's a nonstop success. In fact, the month of May pretty much sells out the slots available for school tours. And so we love being a part of that because kids need to know that. They need to know that, okay, I'm connected to mom and grandparents, dad, but they are healthier, emotionally more grounded when they see themselves as part of a larger narrative. And history tends to be the one thing that does that. Now, that can happen also through kind of theological, religious training. Kids can get something similar to that, but because those things are typically, especially in the Judeo-Christian form, it's a historical framework that you learn that story. But kids learning that, just lots of research that shows how important that is. I mean, you've got kids. You understand that anchoring that it gives those kids. That look, this is your grandparents, and here's why they did here, and here's what they did for a living, and that sense of all those people in the past are rooting for you. Isn't that a powerful thing?
Trying to find your place within the arc of history and humanities, and saying, well, I'm just this small little part here, but look at everything that's come before me, and hopefully I'm preparing the way for the future. Because I love seeing that, because we all have to have, we do best when we have a cohesive narrative of some kind. For me, the Christian story is a beautiful story that anchors me and my family. And I love seeing people find that anchoring. And so a museum like ours gets to be a part of that. And that's pretty neat. So that's the future, is us just being a good partner with the community. Do you see yourself doing anything else, or is this role is made for you and you're going to stay at this position for as long as you can?
I don't know. It's interesting. When I took the job, I thought, I'm going to give this at least a few years. And then my wife said, let's stay. Let's do this. And so I enjoy it so much. I'm always open to the idea that God might have something else for us. But at the same time, I keep seeing I just get really blessed being in this community. And, so I get to go out and do things. I get to serve on other boards. It's part of my job to be a board member of the Texas Forts Trail Heritage Association. So yesterday I was in Brownwood for a board meeting for that, and it's a pretty big chunk of Texas that we represent, and I get to do that. And I serve on the board of directors for the Texas Travel Alliance, which is responsible for nurturing the travel industry in Texas. So I have a lot of relationships through those connections that are very rewarding to me, to get to help that broader picture of developing Texas to compete against other entities. And so I've been real fortunate that way. So, but I'm I know. It's always interesting to see what God's going to bring.
So you're pretty content right now anyway.
I'm grateful. Content
Awesome.
is an interesting thing because I don't know if I'm ever a content person in one sense of like we're done
Yeah.
with things, but it's just my nature. It's how my mom raised me to be grateful, and gratitude is wrapped in a contentment that probably isn't so much just tied to the day to day and where I am, but it's tied to broader things. But so I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to get to interact with people like you and see what you're doing here, because I see people like you just making a difference of saying we're here and we want to be a part of this, and we just want to like amplify what your show does. It just amplifies what people are trying to do.
Yep. Showcase some of the different fun things that are happening in our community and the people that are doing it and making it happen. And I think we're kind of special in Abilene. And so I think it's fun to try to, bolster that as much as possible. So besides serving on other boards and being busy with your children and your wife and Airbnb properties and all these things, what are some other hobbies that you have that keep you busy?
I don't know. I'm trying to. Sometimes they shift. I think I'm a little bit like you in that I love a wide range of artistic things, and I've always found new things. I spent a period of time where my hobbies, and I get to make my hobbies and my job mix. So that's really a fun thing for me. So, filmmaking, particularly documentary. That's as soon as I get back to the museum, I'm putting together the physical parts of the Guardians of the Frontier exhibit. But then as soon as I stop that, it's getting back to editing an 8-minute documentary film that goes with that. And so I love that. So that's where my hobbies and my work just are, they're like very blended together.
I love that.
But other than that, I love talking to people about theology and worldviews. That's fun for me, and that's been fun for me too, because I have grown kids now. That it's super fun to watch them engaging in the world that way. You've got the same thing. You've got grown kids.
It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch their eyes and minds open and question things and try new things. Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up a little bit today, do you have any dreams or visions for Abilene?
I do. It's just kind of this idea that it's this it's a continuation, that we get to be this middle ground between very kind of sleepy, quiet, there's nothing here to see, kind of myth. It's myth. It's not actually that, but it's got a pace to it that's comfortable for people, but then still right on that we get to continue having new people coming in, and that we just get to continue that, because I think that the challenging nature of the landscape makes us resilient.
It does.
It makes us rely on each other more than other people have to. Sometimes. Now, some people have to rely on each other more because they've packed themselves into urban areas where they're right on top of each other, and that requires an interconnectedness that's difficult. But I think we have this nice thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing that the values that come out of a place like this, where this interdependency and holding to certain value sets, I think we have something that contributes to the world. It gets exported. Let me just say that. Things that happen here in Abilene culturally, they get exported all the time.
Yeah.
Because people come here in the Air Force, they show up and they're like, why am I stuck out here? Especially young men, young people, serving in the military. Why am I stuck here? And then they come into the community. If they're willing to engage the community, they find out, wow, there's something different here. These people are exceptionally kind. Yeah. There's all kinds of people trying to make this work. There's all kinds of things to help. There's lots of helpers here. And they find out, well, that's an amazing place. And over again, they take that, like what I would call just love and kindness that they engaged here. People who come to colleges here, then they take that and then they export it. Yeah. And then very often people like myself, I thought I wanted to go as far away as possible, but then getting to come back here,
Yeah.
and probably the thing that anchors me and my wife here is that thing, that this cultural thing about kindness and interdependency.
Well, it's like some of the better aspects of community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works, and I love that we've exported so many people. I have, people I grew up with that are doing amazing things that are very at the top of their craft in a number of different things all over the world, including my siblings. Amazingly successful people elsewhere that are exports of Abilene, and so yeah, I think that's my vision for the future, is that we just keep getting to do that. That the world keeps bringing people to us. We get to love on them. We get to be a part of them, and then a certain amount of them then go out and take this thing out to the world.
I like that.
I hope that, I'd like to see that continue.
Well, as we wrap up a little bit today, do you have any final thoughts or things that you want to share with our audience?
Well, I think that I'm just glad that you're doing what you're doing, and that we got to interact today. That's fun for me, because you're a great guy, fascinating guy, and the facility here, the guys here, Sam and everybody. I love especially Sam and those guys, multi-generations of contributing to this community, and so I'm just glad to get to be here in this cool spot today. And
we're really glad that you're here.
Have a nice conversation with you.
Thank you for joining me today, Jeff, and many good wishes to the museum and all the good things that you're doing there. And I'll have to come check out the new exhibit next week when it's open.
Come drink some wine with us.
I should. I think I'm going to be in Baird that day. Unfortunately, my son's playing in a festival there. So, friends, go check out Guardians of the Frontier. It's going to open October 9th at 6:30 p.m.
That's right.
And
that'll be a free reception.
So if you're
hearing this message, if you've stayed with us this long, you get a bonus, which is if you show up at Frontier, Texas at 6:30 p.m. 2 weeks from now, you're going to get some free food, booze, and history.
Yeah.
We always throw a little booze into it because we have good friends at Belt Buckle Distillery and such, some wineries that are good friends. And so, we'll have some. It's just, and the nice thing about Abilene, it's really weird. We can offer free events to the public, and it still stays the right scale.
Yeah.
Just people show up, and it's always fascinating to me who shows up, because almost every time there's a core audience. They know me, they know Frontier, Texas, but then I love it when, hey, who are you? I've never met you. And here you are showing up to a museum reception.
Yep. And if you haven't been to Frontier, Texas, please go. You can see my mug in there. That's right. But it's also just a really, really well done museum. And everything about it's great. Let's see. Also, just wanted to touch base one more time about Hendrick Hospice. There's some really great events coming up. It is a great resource for grief and for hospice care. Please reach out to them. It's a free resource. Our communities, and that's another great thing about our community, is we have tons of great resources. Sam, what else? Thanks for being our executive producer extraordinaire. Thank you guys for watching. You're always welcome to come down and sit in our audience about 10:30 Thursday mornings. Get some Onyx coffee next door at Majestic.
And hey, I also just want to give a shout out for
it's good.
A chai latte.
It's good. A chai latte.
This is a chai latte. Oh, excellent.
And Jeff says 5 stars.
5 stars.
Okay. Well, Jeff, thanks again for being on here today, and I'm going to come visit you, and we'll shoot it off air, and I can't wait to see that documentary that you're putting together. It'll be good. All right, friends, thanks for watching today. Please like and subscribe and share, and we'll catch you next week when we got another amazing character from the storybook capital of America. All right, signing off from the Travi Wavi. We'll see you next week.